The world has been divided over the Russia-Ukraine crisis. At one end, you have the Western world, which is going in for more sanctions against Russia. On the other end, you have China, which is supporting Russia, even though it's going through the Ukrainian war. India till now has had a very middle-of-the-path approach. Either it has abstained from all the UN resolutions, or it has spoken about the need of dialogue to resolve the crisis.
We call for immediate de-escalation and for refraining from any further action that could contribute to a worsening of the situation.
What is the reason behind this stand that India has taken? Let's have a look at that. I'm Manu, Pabby, senior editor with Economic Times, and here are a few questions which might be interesting to note. A bulk of our defense equipment is still of Russian origin. By some estimates, more than 60% of our defense equipment is of Russian origin. Now, it varies from service to service. The Air Force, for example, almost 90% of India's fighter jets are of Russian origin. These include the Sukhoi 30 MKI, the MiG-21s are still flying, the MiG-29s, and a whole range of transport and helicopters as well. For the army, the entire armored corps, which is the tanks, it is entirely Russian origin, T-72s, T-90s. And for the Navy, frontline warships, a bulk of the submarine fleet, the nuclear submarine under construction, they're all supported or are of Russian origin. And that is where the dependency comes in. The forces are dependent on a regular supply of spares from Russia to maintain the fleet. By some estimates, more than $500 million a year go just on spares. So while we do have a few spares lying around for 3 to 6 months to support the equipment, on a long-term basis, you need the Russian industry to keep supplying parts, spares, and services to keep the Indian armed forces going. See, the problem is that for the longest of times, we were only doing assembling or kit assembly in India. And it is only in the past 7 to 10 years that the focus on Make in India started earnestly. But the legacy equipment that is there remains Russian. And frankly, the Indian PSUs, which were tasked to make Russian equipment like HAL, like BEL, and others, they have not been able to get everything inside transfer of technology to fully make it in India. So for a lot of things, for example, engines, we are still looking at Russia to supply the numbers. The problem has been that without nut and bolt technology right down to the bottom has not been transferred, and the numbers are not enough for that here. And the only way that happens is if you develop your own systems. And if you are dependent on imports from a third country, the supply and service will be also dependent on the country for the period of life of the equipment. See, one of the first things the Indian government did was an assessment of what all is of Russian origin and what all will be impacted. And now this assessment was done at the highest level. The Department of Military Affairs sent out a note to all the 3 services, all departments, to share how much equipment they have, how much is under contract, how much is supposed to come, how many payments are due. See, the problem that we have really landed up in is that the international financial systems have been sanctioned by the Western world against Russia, and Indian banks are finding it very difficult to transfer money to Russia. And we are coming to the end of the financial year, and a lot of money has to be paid for capital acquisitions, for other acquisitions, which are now being stuck. So the ministry is currently assessing how much is stuck, how much problems will occur in the immediate term and in the 6-month term. And on the larger plane, they're of course looking at alternative ways of manufacturing spares and supplies for Russian equipment in India itself. We have to basically, widen our basket of partners, and it is already being done. For example, you have a lot of collaboration with the Israelis, with the French, some with the Americans, but it will take time. The only way to wean away such dependency is to do R&D on your own, be able to source equipment from multiple sources. For example, the next generation of helicopters that we're making with HAL, which will be the medium lift helicopters, they're already thinking that we should have two different sets of engines which can fit on it, so that if in case one country is not a reliable supplier, you can get to a second source. So when you are designing your equipment, and if you can do that in-house, you can reduce dependency by having redundancies. The more the Indian private sector, the more the Indian R&D is done on systems, the lesser the dependency will be on such international levels. There is no doubt that it is time to move on to newer technology and newer ways of war fighting. And we've seen not just now, but in the Azerbaijan conflict also, that conventional forces do face a lot of asymmetric threats which are devastating to them, which we never thought would happen in the past. And similarly, in this conflict also, we see disproportionate attrition of Russian forces by unmanned systems, by man-pads, by anti-ATGMs, which are handheld. And this will happen in an urban setting, in an urban warfare. And I think in this case, at least what Indian analysts think, it is more a problem of employing the equipment and the equipment itself being a problem. So the tactics are questionable rather than the equipment. And of course, India has to win away not just from Russian, but from any other foreign technology in the long term. But the problem is that immediately, the tanks, for example, we have the entire fleet of tanks, another 15 years, 20 years of life left. They are of Russian origin. So we have to innovate. We have this set of Russian equipment with us. We have things, and we've seen how they are done, how they have not performed, and we have to take away lessons from them. We have to upgrade the systems accordingly. We have to give them protected covers. We have to, find different ways to deploy them and employ them so that we don't get into this problem. And of course, the solution is going to be custom-made defense products for the Indian Armed Forces, custom-made by the Indian industry for the Indian forces. And there are many examples like that, which are hopefully going to come up in the next few years. And we have to just learn from each and every of such conflicts and figure out how can we protect our soldiers if they get into such a situation.